These notes are on G1, Principles of Geography, and this is just on G1A and G1B. So the learning objective for G1 is to explain how geographers use maps and data to contextualize spatial relationships and examine the human organization of space. So maps and data are used for two very specific purposes: to look at how humans organize themselves on the Earth's surface, and also to provide some context to those spatial relationships. So for G1A, that's all about how maps represent space, and your essential knowledge for G1A is that maps convey representations of space, of place, and of location through symbols, keys, scale, and other manners of representation. And so on your notes for G1A, you're going to record the notes that are going to be on the following slides. You're going to record those notes on the right-hand side. And then afterwards, we're going to write level 1 and possibly some level 2 questions on the left. You can use your Costa's handout in class information of your binder to help you. We're going to write those questions on the left-hand side later on to help you process that information. So the first notes we're going to write is about scale. So scale is used to show relationships between measurements on a map and then the actual distances they represent. It's similar to a ratio. So you see two examples of scales on this slide. And so obviously if something was two cities were 200 miles apart, we would not have a map that was 200 miles long. So we would create a scale so that we could measure the distance and then use that scale to see how far apart they were. There are two types of scale, and it's actually based on that distance. So again, you're writing the notes that you see on the right-hand side of your paper. So a small scale map, similar to the one that you see, the map on the right, that shows very little or small detail, and it shows a large area. So a world map would be a small scale map. A map of the United States would be a small scale map. We're not trying to show individual roads or neighborhoods or where a gas station is located. The other type of scale is called a large scale map. And a large scale map, similar to the one, the map on the left, is going to show lots of detail, a large amount of detail, but it's going to show a small area, so it's zoomed in. So you're going to see more detail about individual roads and businesses. Please write this information on your notes. So symbols are used by map makers to represent information on the map, and then that information, that symbol, is explained on a map key, which is also known as a legend. So on this image, it's a very basic key, probably for like 3-year-olds, but you've got these flowers on the map, and that represents a flower garden. You've got water on the map, that represents a duck pond. Again, write the notes on the right-hand side of your notes. So another thing that map makers use is a compass rose, or sometimes they'll use just a north arrow, and that's used to orient location. So which way is north, south, east, and west? So you see on the map of Canada that you have that compass rose on the bottom left corner, and that north here is slightly diagonal to the right-hand side. You also have a scale, and so you can tell that this is a small scale map. It is showing very small detail, Canada is a larger country than the United States, so it shows a large area. And then also this map has a legend explaining that those colors are showing different regions of Canada. The other thing that map makers use is a grid system. So sometimes map makers will use a grid system to identify absolute location. Absolute location is a unique location on the Earth's surface. Your home address is an absolute location. That's how the post office knows whose home to deliver the mail to. In geography, absolute location is usually shown through lines of latitude and longitude. And so here, lines of latitude, these are parallel lines, they never touch. They circle the Earth going horizontally, they're imaginary lines. 0 degrees latitude is the equator, and then those lines of latitude go north all the way to the North Pole, that's 90 degrees north. And then these lines of latitude go south all the way to 90 degrees south, that is the South Pole. Crossing those lines of latitude are lines of longitude, and lines of longitude touch at the poles, and then they go vertically across the Earth's surface to the other pole, and they are the widest at the equator. And our two main lines of longitude are 0 degrees, that's the prime meridian, and then on the other side you would have 180 degrees longitude, that is the international dateline. Lines of latitude separate the Earth into northern and southern hemispheres because you're either above the equator or below the equator. Lines of longitude separate the Earth into western and eastern hemispheres. You're either to the west of the prime meridian or to the east of the prime meridian. Sometimes, if it's a travel map or a road map, instead of lines of latitude and longitude, they'll just have a grid system on the map that shows letters and numbers. Here is a world map that shows those lines of latitude and longitude intersecting each other. There are different types of maps that show different information in different ways depending on the map's purpose. So here you've got a physical map, here you have a political map, here you have a population density map. Again, these are very different types of maps, and they all have a very different purpose. In class, you will be seeing several maps about scale, so I just want you to get a preview. So this is of New York City, and it's from a satellite. This is from an overpass. Somebody took a picture in New York City on an overpass. So again, looking at scale. This is New York City at night, and this is an aerial photograph showing very specific information. This is another aerial photograph of New York City taken in the daytime. Again, we're going to be comparing scale. So G1B is purposes, approaches, and context of maps. And our essential knowledge here is that maps reflect political and cultural context, and maps prioritize or exclude or distort information to serve a variety of purposes. So again, we're going to record our notes on the right-hand side, and then later on we're going to write down levels of questions. So maps are not accurate representations. Please write this on your notes. Maps can emphasize, exclude, or distort data to serve a purpose. Information can be influenced by the political and/or cultural context in which maps are made and their intended use. So looking at the map on the slide, this is a map of the world. This is not the normal way that we here in the United States see the map of the world. So our maps that we have in our textbooks and in our atlases, show the map of the world where north is at the top, not the southern hemisphere, and where the United States and Europe is more in the center. This map of the world would probably be for a country like Australia. If you notice, Australia is written facing forward, as are all the other countries. This is probably a map for Australia since it's more in the center. And so this map maker is trying to give some political intercultural context that Australia would be important. We also have map projections. Map projections can distort information because we have a three-dimensional round Earth. So every time we have a paper representation, a two-dimensional representation of the Earth, it is always going to distort information. There are so many map projections. Some examples are Mercator, Robinson, Gall-Peters, Equal Area, and Conic projections. And on this image, you see Mercator, which is in yellow, and then the Gall-Peters, which is in blue. And you can see that although both map projections are showing the same exact continents on the Earth, they are not equivalent to each other, and neither of them are accurate. So again, it's all based on what are you trying to emphasize. So if you were the United States, or if you were Asia, you might really like these, the Mercator maps, because it really focuses, makes your country larger, right? Okay. In class, we're going to look at two different sources. So source 10 is the Washington, D.C. area, and it is the metro system. It is the rail system. Source 11 shows that rail system, but it also shows the street map. So we're going to be looking at the purpose of the map maker, how is information distorted, excluded. That is all of your notes for today.